The sleepy, economically struggling town of Havenwood lay nestled deep within the verdant, rolling Appalachian foothills of Pennsylvania, a place where time seemed to move at a slower, heavier pace. It was late summer, the air thick and humid, clinging to everything with a palpable weight. A pervasive sense of stagnation hung over the town like the haze that often clung to the distant mountain peaks. The very infrastructure whispered tales of decline. Faded paint peeled from the grand Victorian houses that lined Main Street. Rusted signs creaked mournfully on boarded-up storefronts, and by the sluggish Haven River, the skeletal remains of old textile mills stood like forgotten giants, their windows broken, their glory days long past. Havenwood was a town trapped in its past, its once vibrant spirit slowly eroding under the relentless tide of economic hardship and forgotten dreams. In this quiet, fading town lived Liam Hayes, a boy of 12, whose spirit seemed to shimmer with a light too bright for Havenwood's dimming hues. While other boys his age were consumed by the thrill of a perfectly pitched fastball on the dusty Little League field, or the quiet patience of fishing for catfish in the slow-moving river, Liam found his solace and his vibrant world elsewhere. His afternoons were typically spent in the town's abandoned library, a place that, much like Havenwood itself, had seen better days. Dust motes danced in the shafts of sunlight that pierced the grimy windows, illuminating rows of forgotten books on creaking shelves. But for Liam, it was a sanctuary, a gateway to worlds beyond Havenwood's stagnant borders. He would sit for hours at a scarred oak table, his small fingers tracing the faded blueprints of impossible cities in oversized, leather-bound books. He devoured texts on architecture, urban planning, and civil engineering, his young mind absorbing every line, every curve, every intricate detail. He filled countless notebooks with his own creations, his charcoal-smudged hands bringing soaring towers to life on the page, designing innovative bridges that spanned imaginary ravines, and conceptualizing vibrant public spaces that bore no resemblance to Havenwood's drab, utilitarian reality. His sketches were not childish scrawls, but intricate visions, imbued with a clarity and foresight far beyond his years. His loneliness was not a loud, crying thing, but a quiet, constant hum, a background note in the symphony of his days. At lunchtime, while his classmates congregated in boisterous groups outside the school cafeteria, their laughter echoing through the hall, Liam would often retreat to a quiet corner, his sandwich forgotten in his lap. He would observe them from afar, a quiet, almost wistful smile on his face as he imagined a different world, not just for himself, but for them, for Havenwood. He envisioned bustling marketplaces where the boarded-up stores now stood, parks where children's laughter truly filled the air, and homes that felt warm, welcoming, and vibrant. He wasn't sad. He was simply elsewhere, his mind constantly constructing and deconstructing, rebuilding and reimagining. One scorching afternoon, the air in the library hung heavy and still, thick with the scent of old paper and dust. Liam, lost in the intricate details of a Gothic cathedral's vaulting arches, was jolted by a series of grunts and exasperated sighs coming from the far corner. It was Mrs. Gable, the elderly, notoriously cantankerous librarian. Her gray hair was pulled back in a severe bun, and her spectacles perched precariously on her nose as she struggled with a large, heavy cardboard box overflowing with donated books. The box, clearly too heavy for her frail frame, wobbled precariously, threatening to spill its contents across the worn linoleum floor. Most of the children, and even some adults, gave Mrs. Gable a wide berth. Her sharp tongue and perpetual scowl were legendary in Havenwood. But Liam, without a moment's hesitation, dropped his sketchbook and hurried over. He knew the box held more than just books. It held stories, knowledge, and for him, blueprints to new worlds. The thought of them spilling, perhaps being damaged, spurred him into action. "Mrs. Gable," he said, his voice quiet but firm, "let me help you with that." She squinted at him, her lips pursed, as if trying to discern his ulterior motive. Humph. What for? Boy. Think you're strong enough for old Mrs. Gable's burdens, she grumbled, but her grip on the box loosened imperceptibly. It looks heavy, Liam replied simply, already bracing himself and reaching for the bottom of the box. He grunted with effort, the cardboard digging into his small hands, but he lifted, carefully, steadily. He then walked alongside her, guiding the box with surprising dexterity, as she shuffled towards a vacant shelf. He didn't just dump the box, he carefully lowered it. Then, without being asked, began to meticulously unpack the books, stacking them neatly, arranging them by size and even, intuitively, by subject. He even found a few children's books that had been misplaced and gently put them into their proper section. Mrs. Gable watched him, her initial suspicion slowly melting into a faint surprise. When he was done, he straightened up, wiping a bead of sweat from his brow. There you go. Mrs. Gable, he said, offering a genuine, unburdened smile. He didn't wait for thanks or praise. He simply turned and returned to his table, picking up his forgotten sketchbook. This small, unnoticed act of kindness, this willingness to help even a difficult person, revealed his innate goodness, his quiet generosity of spirit. It was a subtle act of compassion, a promise of the deeper caring he possessed for his community, even if it often went unseen. As Liam returned to his architectural musings, his eye caught a peculiar detail on the lowest, dustiest shelf, tucked away behind a leaning stack of old newspapers. It was a rolled-up scroll, tied with a brittle, faded ribbon, yellowed with age. Curiosity piqued. He carefully extracted it, the paper crackling faintly as he untied the ribbon. He unrolled it gently on the table, careful not to tear the fragile parchment. What unfolded before him was not a book, but a magnificent, incredibly detailed blueprint. Its title, rendered in ornate, old-fashioned script, read, "Original Design for Havenwood Town Hall, 1928. Liam's breath hitched. He had seen the existing town hall, a drab utilitarian brick building erected quickly after the Great Depression, functional but utterly unremarkable. This blueprint, however, was a vision of grandeur that transcended the building Havenwood had. It depicted a magnificent structure, far grander than anything in Havenwood. A soaring dome, intricately detailed with classical motifs, crowned the central building. Columns, fluted and elegant, flanked a grand entrance adorned with elaborate carvings of civic virtues. The internal layout showed vast, light-filled chambers, a majestic assembly hall, and even a small, beautifully landscaped public square envisioned for the front. It was a masterpiece of civic architecture, a building that spoke of aspiration, of a community's highest ideals, a stark contrast to the town's current decay. Liam's eyes gleamed with a mixture of awe and immediate recognition. It was as if he intuitively understood the original architect's vision, sensing the unspoken stories within the lines and curves. But more than that, his sharp mind, even at 12, began to register subtle inconsistencies. He noticed a faint, almost imperceptible line here, a shaded section there, and a small, almost hidden note scribbled in the margin that spoke of budgetary constraints leading to simplified roofline. He could see how the existing town hall was a stripped-down, cost-cut version of this magnificent blueprint. And in a flash of insight, his mind already started to generate alternatives. Slight modifications to the dome's curve that would allow for more natural light. A different articulation of the columns that would make them seem less heavy, more soaring. It was as if he was conversing with the long-dead architect, understanding their intent, perhaps even seeing potential flaws or improvements they had missed or been forced to abandon. This subtle detail, the way he instantly connected with and even began to improve upon a complex architectural design, hinted at his extraordinary spatial intelligence and innate talent, creating a profound curiosity about his future potential. It was a secret gift, known only to him and the silent whispers of the blueprint. As summer drew to a close, a palpable anxiety settled over Havenwood. News spread, not through formal announcements, but through hushed conversations at the diner and anxious murmurs at the grocery store. The town council was holding a major public meeting. The agenda was grim, but familiar. Havenwood's ongoing economic decline and the desperate, increasingly urgent need for revitalization. The general mood was one of deep cynicism and weary resignation. Decades of decline had chipped away at the town's spirit, leaving behind a pervasive sense of hopelessness. Everyone would attend, out of a morbid curiosity, a desperate flicker of hope, or merely the habit of collective commiseration. Liam, though young, was keenly aware of the town's struggles. He saw the empty storefronts, the desperate eyes of his neighbors, the quiet despair that clung to the air like the humid summer haze. He overheard his parents, exhausted from working 2 jobs, debating whether they would have to leave Havenwood for better prospects. He clutched his sketchbook tightly, his mind already brimming with unconventional ideas, fantastical visions for his hometown that he believed, with a fervent, youthful conviction, could pull Havenwood back from the brink. A quiet sense of purpose, a nascent understanding of his own role in this unfolding drama, began to stir within him. He had no idea what the meeting would truly entail, but he sensed, deep down, that it might hold a personal significance, a turning point not just for Havenwood, but for the dreamer boy himself. The quiet before the storm had begun to ripple, and Liam, with his head full of impossible structures, was standing right at its epicenter. The Havenwood Town Hall, usually a staid and echoing place, buzzed with a grim energy that evening. Every seat was filled, and people spilled into the aisles, their faces etched with a familiar blend of hope and cynicism. The air was thick with the scent of stale coffee and unspoken anxieties. Liam, having slipped in unnoticed, found a spot in the back row, clutching his worn sketchbook like a shield. He felt a nervous flutter in his stomach, but beneath it, a fervent belief in the vibrant images that filled his mind. Mayor Thompson, a kindly but perpetually overwhelmed man, cleared his throat. Friends, neighbors, thank you for coming. We're here tonight to address the pressing issue of Havenwood's economic future. As many of you know, our unemployment rate is, well, it's higher than ever. Businesses are leaving. Young families are looking elsewhere. And our beautiful town, frankly, is struggling. The ensuing discussion was a depressing echo of every town meeting for the past decade. Familiar complaints circulated: lack of jobs, crumbling infrastructure, the exodus of youth. Solutions offered were timid. Rehashed ideas about attracting small businesses with tax breaks or patching potholes, never truly addressing the systemic decline. The general sentiment was one of resignation, a weariness that had settled deep into Havenwood's bones. Liam listened, his young mind churning. He saw the problems, yes, but he also saw the latent potential, the inherent beauty of the town beneath its decay. His gaze drifted to the stage, to the tired faces of the council members, then to the worn wooden floor beneath his feet, which he imagined transforming into polished, light-reflecting tiles. He thought of the dusty old library, the grand blueprint, and the vibrant, impossible cities in his sketches. He couldn't stay silent. The words, the visions, were bubbling up inside him, desperate to be set free. He tentatively raised his hand, his arm feeling impossibly heavy. A few people glanced back, then dismissed him. Mayor Thompson, however, ever keen to hear from the community, spotted him. Yes, young man, do you have something to add? Liam's heart hammered against his ribs. He felt the weight of all those cynical, weary eyes. He stood, his knees trembling slightly. Yes, Mayor, I've been thinking a lot about Havenwood, he began, his voice surprisingly clear, though a tremor ran through it. We talk about patching things up, but what if we could build something new, something that makes people want to come here? A ripple of murmurs went through the crowd. Some scoffed, others simply looked bewildered. I've been sketching, Liam continued, Gaining a fragile confidence. Imagine a central public space, not just a park, but a gathering place, with art installations, maybe a fountain that lights up at night, and a modern community center, built with eco-friendly materials, that has spaces for workshops, a big hall for town events, even a small startup incubator for new businesses. And instead of tearing down all the old buildings, we could repurpose them, like the old mill by the river. It could be apartments, or artists' studios, or a big indoor market. We could make Havenwood a place that's vibrant, a place of the future, but still honoring its past. He spoke with a youthful passion that was almost disarming, outlining a rudimentary but visionary plan. He spoke of natural light, pedestrian-friendly zones, and green spaces, concepts largely alien to Havenwood's current urban planning. He even gestured vaguely with his free hand, as if drawing the very lines of his vision in the air. Silence followed his words, a thick, uncomfortable silence. Then, a loud, derisive scoff broke it. Childish fantasies boomed a voice from the front row. It was Mr. Sterling Vance, the town's most prominent, and arguably most powerful, real estate developer. Sterling was a man who equated progress with profit, and profit with the cheapest, fastest build. He was a pillar of the community, but his pillars were always made of reinforced concrete and driven by pure economics. He was in his late 40s, impeccably dressed, with a booming laugh that could fill a room and a dismissive wave of his hand that could silence any dissent. He had been a high school bully of Liam's older brother, and his condescending remarks had often trickled down to Liam himself, reinforcing the painful label of dreamer boy. Sterling stood, turning to face the bewildered crowd. "Folks, we're here to discuss serious matters, not some school project art installations, fountains that light up. This is Havenwood, not some grand metropolis. We need practical solutions, not unrealistic dreams from a child." He paused, letting his words hang in the air, his eyes sweeping over the faces, seeking validation. What we need is efficiency. We tear down the old, decaying structures that are costing us money in maintenance and liability. We put up affordable, prefabricated housing. We bring in industrial businesses that need cheap, functional warehouses, not eco-friendly community centers. That's how you get jobs, not with whimsical visions that'll just waste taxpayer money and lead us further into debt. He championed a purely utilitarian cost-cutting plan. His philosophy, simple minimal investment for maximum, immediate profit. He was the embodiment of the misguided Type B antagonist, driven by short-sighted greed and a deep disdain for anything that challenged his practical, conventional worldview. He knew how to play to the town's fears, their ingrained skepticism towards anything new or unproven. A wave of laughter, a few snickers, and then murmurs of agreement rippled through the crowd. "He's right," someone muttered. "Dreams don't pay the bills. Liam's always been a bit out there." The words, the very words Sterling had used, childish fantasies. Unrealistic dreams echoed in Liam's ears, sharp and stinging. They were the same taunts he'd heard on the playground, the same dismissive remarks from teachers who wanted him to focus on practical subjects, the same quiet sighs from neighbors who thought he spent too much time with his head in the clouds. Public humiliation washed over Liam, hot and suffocating. His face flushed scarlet, his sketchbook suddenly feeling heavy and foolish in his trembling hands. The vibrant cities in his mind seemed to crumble, replaced by the grim reality of Havenwood's skepticism. He felt the familiar wound of being different, of being misunderstood, reopened and raw. He wanted to disappear, to sink into the floorboards and never be seen again. He wanted to abandon his impossible dreams, to conform, to simply blend in, to stop feeling this persistent ache of being an outsider. But then, as the laughter died down and the familiar weight of hopelessness settled back into the room, something else stirred within him. A deep-seated love for Havenwood, a fervent belief in its potential, sparked to life. He envisioned not just buildings, but a future for the families, for his own family, for the quiet beauty he saw beneath the decay. He was convinced that true revitalization wasn't just about economics. It was about spirit, about beauty, about innovation. This personal stake elevated the conflict beyond mere childhood bullying. It became a profound challenge to his very identity and his deepest convictions. That night, Liam did not sleep. The humiliating words, Sterling's sneering face, the stifling laughter of the crowd they replayed in his mind. A torturous loop. But instead of crushing him, they ignited a fierce, burning resolve. He climbed out of bed, the floorboards creaking softly beneath his bare feet. He turned on his small desk lamp, its weak glow illuminating the clutter of his small room. He pulled out his sketchbook, its pages now damp with sweat from his clenched hand. He didn't just refine his existing sketches, he poured every ounce of his indignation, his passion, and his burgeoning sense of destiny into them. He added intricate details to the community center's facade, showing how it could be both modern and harmonious with the town's existing architecture. He sketched the interior of the repurposed mill, illustrating vibrant loft apartments, sun-drenched art studios, and a bustling farmers market that breathed new life into the derelict structure. He researched innovative urban designs from obscure international journals he'd found hidden in the library, incorporating elements of sustainable living, green roofs, and interconnected public spaces. He meticulously calculated sun angles for optimal natural light, charted pedestrian flow, and imagined the quiet hum of a revitalized town. His mind worked with a furious intensity, transforming the raw pain of humiliation into a powerful surge of creative energy. Each line, each shade, each annotation was a silent act of defiance, a promise to himself and to Havenwood. He wouldn't abandon his vision. He would make it tangible. He would make it undeniable. This act of defiant creation, of transforming profound humiliation into inspired, detailed action, marked his definitive point of no return. He could not go back to merely being a quiet, dismissed dreamer. The path was now clear, carved out of his own wounded pride and unshakable conviction. He resolved, silently, fiercely, to leave Havenwood, to gain the knowledge, the skills, the credentials necessary to someday return, not as a teased boy, but as an undeniable force, and build the town he dreamed of. Brick by visionary brick, he would show them, all of them. Unbeknownst to Liam, among the many faces in the town hall that night, one pair of eyes observed him with a different kind of curiosity. Sarah Jenkins, a young, idealistic reporter for the local weekly paper, the Havenwood Chronicle, had been dispatched to cover the meeting. She was new to town, still finding her footing, and hadn't yet fully succumbed to the pervasive cynicism. Sarah was struck by Liam's earnest passion, by the sheer audacity of his youthful vision in the face of such entrenched resignation. And then, she watched as Sterling Vance, a man she already instinctively distrusted due to his ruthless business practices, publicly ridiculed the boy. She saw the flush on Liam's face, the slight tremble in his hands, but also the stubborn glint in his eyes that didn't quite extinguish. While the rest of the room erupted in dismissive laughter, Sarah felt a spark of sympathy. She sensed a deeper truth in Liam's fantasies, an intuition that there was more to his ideas than met the eye, more than Havenwood was willing to admit. She didn't intervene, professionalism dictating her silence, but her watchful presence, her quiet understanding, established her as a potential ally. This idealistic newcomer, driven by a nascent sense of justice, would later become the crucial helper in Liam's long journey, a quiet witness to his silent vow of return. The seed of a legend, nourished by defiance, had been planted. Years unfurled like the meticulous unfurling of a complex blueprint, each one carrying Liam further from the suffocating confines of Havenwood, yet drawing him ever closer to the realization of his childhood dream. The small, ridiculed dreamer boy had, through sheer grit and an almost obsessive dedication, forged himself into Liam Hayes, the world-renowned architect, His name was whispered with reverence in the hallowed halls of design, his iconic structures gracing skylines from Tokyo to Berlin, each a testament to his unique blend of visionary artistry and pragmatic ingenuity. He built museums that defied gravity, sustainable housing complexes that redefined urban living, and public spaces that hummed with life, all bearing his unmistakable signature buildings that felt both groundbreaking and deeply, humanly resonant. Yet, despite the global acclaim, Havenwood remained a quiet, persistent ache in his soul, a wound that refused to fully heal. He kept abreast of its slow decline through regional news articles and quiet phone calls with his aging parents. The textile mills, once merely skeletal, were now crumbling husks. The Main Street storefronts, once merely boarded up, were now actively decaying, their facades collapsing like tired sighs. The town was fading, slowly but surely, into obscurity. Then, the news broke that sent a jolt through Liam's carefully constructed world. Havenwood's town council, finally spurred by a fresh wave of desperation, a major long-standing factory on the town's outskirts, Havenwood Gear Works, had announced its imminent closure, threatening hundreds of jobs and the town's complete economic collapse, had initiated a major revitalization project. It was a last-ditch effort, a desperate plea for survival. Liam, officially on an anonymous scouting trip for potential new projects in the region, couldn't resist. He arrived in Havenwood under the cloak of anonymity, his tailored suit and quiet demeanor allowing him to blend into the shadows of the crowd. He attended a public forum, held in the decrepit Old Town Hall, the very building whose original grand blueprint he had discovered as a child. The air inside was thick with the familiar scent of mildew and resignation. The primary topic of debate was the fate of the old textile mill by the river. Its hulking brick shell stood as the most potent symbol of Havenwood's industrial past and its current decay. It was a massive, contentious structure, a ghost of prosperity that cast a long shadow over the town's future. As expected, Sterling Vance took center stage. He was older now, perhaps a little heavier, but his presence was still as imposing, his voice as booming, as Liam remembered. He was no longer just a prominent real estate developer. He was a powerful figure on the town council, his influence absolute in most civic matters. He stood before the crowd, his impeccably tailored suit a stark contrast to the threadbare desperation of many in the audience. "Folks," Sterling boomed, his voice resonating through the poorly amplified hall, "we're not here to mince words. That old mill is an eyesore. It's a hazard. It's costing us money just sitting there, rotting. My proposal is simple, practical, and most importantly, cost-effective. We tear it down, demolish it completely, level the ground, and in its place, we build a state-of-the-art, utilitarian concrete warehouse, cheap to construct, easy to lease out to some industrial firm, and it'll bring in immediate jobs, immediate revenue. No fuss, no frills, just solid, common-sense business." His solution was his standard, profit-driven approach, valuing pure utility over any historical or aesthetic consideration. A murmur of agreement went through the crowd. Most residents, weary of grand promises and economic decline, found solace in the simple, brutal pragmatism of Sterling's plan. They'd seen enough dreams crumble. Liam, tucked away in the back, felt a familiar surge of indignation. The mill, for all its decay, was more than just a building to him. It was a repository of Havenwood's history, its struggles, its very identity. Tearing it down for a faceless concrete box felt like erasing a part of the town's soul. He glanced down at his hands, idly sketching a complex structural solution on a napkin. Then, a nervous voice cut through the air. "Mr. Mayor." A younger council member. Sarah Thompson, no relation to the mayor, but a distant cousin to Liam's childhood friend, began hesitantly. She had discreetly attended a few architectural lectures in the city and, secretly, admired Liam Hayes's work for years, though she knew he was rarely present at public forums. I believe we have a distinguished guest in our midst tonight. A, a visionary. Perhaps, Mr. Hayes, if you would be so kind. She subtly gestured towards the back of the room, her eyes seeking Liam's. Liam froze. He hadn't intended to be recognized. Not yet. But the spotlight, unexpected and unwelcome, was on him. He felt the familiar weight of all eyes turning, the sudden hush. He slowly stood, a tremor of apprehension running through him. This was the involuntary unveiling, a moment where he was compelled to reveal himself and his talent. Mr. Hayes, Mayor Thompson, surprised but eager for any fresh perspective, welcomed him. Do you have an opinion on the mill? Or perhaps Mr. Vance's proposal? Liam took a deep breath. He wasn't going to simply criticize. He was going to offer an alternative, a vision. His voice, initially hesitant, gained strength as he spoke, the architect within him rising to the surface. Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Vance's proposal is certainly practical from a purely economic standpoint. However, I believe Havenwood deserves more than mere utility. The old mill, yes, it's dilapidated, but its bones are strong. Its history is invaluable. Tearing it down would be to erase a vital part of this town's narrative. He paused, his gaze sweeping over the skeptical faces, then settling on the wall behind the council where a large, empty whiteboard stood. Imagine, instead. He continued, walking towards the board, picking up a stray marker, his movements becoming fluid, confident. Imagine transforming it, preserving its historical facade. Yes, the beautiful brickwork, the industrial windows, but integrating modern, sustainable designs within. The vast internal space could become a multi-use community hub, the ground floor, a bustling farmers market, local artisans showcasing their crafts, the middle floors, perhaps affordable co-working spaces for fledgling tech startups, or artist studios that draw creative talent. The top floors, light-filled residential lofts, drawing young professionals back to Havenwood. As he spoke, he sketched rapidly on the whiteboard, his hand moving with astonishing speed and precision. Lines appeared, forming complex structural solutions, innovative uses of light and space. He drew a grand atrium in the heart of the mill, an outdoor amphitheater built into the riverbank, and pedestrian walkways that connected the mill to the town center, creating a cohesive urban flow. He spoke of passive solar heating, rainwater harvesting, and integrated green spaces. His words filled with a profound understanding of urban dynamics, structural integrity, and aesthetic harmony. He outlined a detailed conceptual design that showcased his extraordinary spatial talent, his ability to see not what was, but what could be. The vision began to take tangible, compelling form before their very eyes. Sterling Vance, watching this impromptu demonstration, felt a cold dread creep into his stomach. He recognized the boy, of course, the dreamer, the one he'd publicly humiliated years ago. And now, he was standing here, not just dreaming, but drawing, creating, with an undeniable genius. Fury ignited within him. This was not just an alternative proposal. It was a personal affront, a direct challenge to his authority, his very way of doing business. This is preposterous, Sterling roared, his voice cutting through the murmurs of awe that had begun to spread through the audience. He strode forward, his face contorted in a sneer. Mr. Hayes, with all due respect, your visions are precisely what we do not need. This is Havenwood, not some avant-garde art gallery. Your ideas are outlandish, financially irresponsible, and utterly detached from the practical realities of our town. He actively worked to rally the townspeople, painting Liam as an outsider, a privileged architect who had no understanding of their struggles. He then turned to the crowd, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial tone. Folks, don't be fooled by pretty pictures. This is the same dreamer boy who wasted our time with grand fantasies when he was just a child. He comes back here, from his ivory tower, with pie-in-the-sky ideas that will only drain our meager taxpayer money and leave us with another half-finished monument to unrealistic ambition. He's an outsider, disconnected from our values, our practical needs. This isn't a revitalization. It's a betrayal of Havenwood's honest, hard-working spirit. He framed Liam's proposal as an extravagant folly, subtly manipulating public opinion against him, setting the stage for a town-wide debate that he fully intended to win. His disdain for Liam was palpable, a deep-seated antagonism rooted in a perceived challenge to his long-held power and worldview. Among the murmuring crowd, Sarah Jenkins watched, a flash of recognition lighting up her eyes. The passionate boy from the town meeting, the one she'd quietly felt a flicker of sympathy for, was back. And he was magnificent. Her initial sympathy now transformed into keen professional interest and a profound sense of validation. She had seen through Sterling Vance's bluster years ago, and now, seeing him actively try to crush this undeniable talent, her journalistic instincts screamed. She was captivated by Liam's detailed proposal and the stunning, evocative sketches that seemed to pull Havenwood's future directly from the air. She saw not just an architect, but a story, a crucial exposé. Sarah began to actively investigate Sterling Vance's business dealings, discreetly at first. She had always suspected his cost-cutting measures might be a front for something more insidious. She sensed an underlying corruption beneath his public facade, a greed that went beyond mere profit. This would make her Liam's key helper, an invaluable ally in the battles to come. Armed with the sharp blade of truth, while many in the room were swayed by Sterling's powerful rhetoric, a few faces in the crowd showed cautious interest, a flicker of something new, younger generations, tired of Havenwood's stagnation, and a handful of struggling business owners, desperate for any glimmer of hope beyond Sterling's stagnant proposals, exchanged uncertain glances. They didn't openly support Liam yet, fearing Sterling's retribution, but a faint whisper of doubt about Sterling's long-term vision, about his true motives, began to circulate. The stage was now set for a deeper, more profound conflict, one that would pit vision against avarice and dreams against the crushing weight of a cynical past. Liam had returned, not to a quiet welcome, but to a fierce battle for the soul of Havenwood. The summer heat gave way to a biting autumn chill, and with it, Havenwood's economic woes deepened into a full-blown crisis. The whispers that had circulated about Havenwood Gearworks closing became a stark, devastating reality. The factory, the town's largest employer for nearly 50 years, announced its definitive closure, effective in 6 months. Hundreds of jobs would be lost, wiping out generations of family livelihoods. The news struck the town like a seismic tremor, threatening not just job losses, but Havenwood's complete economic collapse. The quiet desperation that had long simmered beneath the surface now boiled over into widespread fear and palpable anxiety. Houses went on the market, suddenly empty. Families began to pack, their faces grim. The need for a solution, any solution, became overwhelmingly urgent. The town council, reeling from the factory closure and facing immense pressure from a panicked populace, scheduled a definitive vote on the mill project. This was it, the last chance to choose a path forward, a desperate gamble for Havenwood's future. The public debate between Liam's visionary proposal and Sterling Vance's pragmatic, profit-driven plan escalated into a bitter town-wide conflict, each side vying for the soul of Havenwood. Sterling Vance, seeing his power base threatened by the rising interest in Liam's alternative, escalated his tactics. He was no longer content with mere public ridicule. His ambition, fueled by greed, curdled into something far more insidious. He began to manipulate council members behind closed doors, offering lucrative personal deals and veiled threats. He spread insidious rumors about Liam's supposed financial instability, whispering that Liam's world-famous projects often ran over budget, that he was unreliable, too much of a dreamer to handle Havenwood's practical needs. He even hired local thugs, not for outright violence, but for subtle intimidation, anonymous phone calls to wavering council members, graffiti painted on the properties of Liam's vocal supporters, quiet warnings delivered in dark alleyways. But Sterling's most heinous machination remained a closely guarded secret. He had secretly secured a separate, incredibly lucrative deal. If Liam's project failed, Sterling would sell off the mill's demolition scrap, steel, bricks, timber, to a shady conglomerate for an exorbitant sum. More horrifyingly, he had arranged to sell the newly leveled land, the very heart of Havenwood's industrial heritage, to an unsavory corporation that intended to turn it into a toxic waste dump. This was his true plan, a vile scheme that promised massive personal profit at the expense of Havenwood's environmental integrity and the health of its remaining citizens. This revelation marked Sterling's full transition into an antagonist type A, driven by pure, unadulterated greed and a chilling willingness to harm his own community for personal gain. He presented a veneer of pragmatism to the public, while beneath, he was orchestrating a betrayal of monumental proportions. The definitive vote was set to take place at the Old Town Hall, the very building whose original grand blueprint Liam had discovered as a wide-eyed child. It stood as a potent symbol of Havenwood's stunted potential, its once proud facade now peeling, its interior echoing with the ghosts of failed promises. The setting underscored the intensely personal significance of this battle for Liam, a literal return to the scene of his first public humiliation, now elevated to a struggle for the town's very existence. Liam, despite his global success, found himself increasingly isolated in Havenwood. His former classmates and many townspeople, swayed by Sterling's relentless propaganda and their own ingrained skepticism, viewed him with deep suspicion. They saw him as an outsider, a big city architect who understood nothing of their struggles, his visions dismissed as frivolous, pie-in-the-sky ideas that would only plunge them deeper into debt. The local newspaper, subtly influenced by Sterling's advertising dollars, ran articles questioning the feasibility of Liam's extravagant plans, fueling public doubt. Old wounds, the echoes of childhood taunts, resurfaced, reminding him of his past as the ridiculed dreamer. Sarah Jenkins remained his only consistent, unwavering ally. She worked tirelessly, late into the night, her tiny office at the Havenwood Chronicle littered with documents and coffee cups. Her investigation into Sterling Vance's business dealings had yielded alarming results, hinting at the toxic waste deal, but it was incomplete. She was still missing the final, irrefutable evidence, and time was rapidly running out. She felt the weight of the town's future pressing on her, knowing that Liam's visionary plan was the only real salvation, and that Sterling's hidden agenda was pure poison. She worked with a quiet fury, driven by a deep sense of justice for a town she had come to call home. Liam, knowing that this final meeting at the town hall was his absolute last chance, spent every waking moment refining his presentation. He meticulously rechecked every structural calculation for the mill conversion, ensuring its safety and viability. He created breathtaking digital renderings that brought his vision to life with stunning realism. He prepared detailed economic projections, demonstrating how his project, though initially more expensive than Sterling's demolition plan, would generate far greater long-term revenue, attract new businesses, and create sustainable jobs. He even included detailed plans for vocational training programs for the displaced Gearworks employees, showing how they could be retrained for jobs in the revitalized mill. The pressure weighed heavily on him. It wasn't just about proving his architectural genius. It was about rebuilding trust, about convincing an entire community, hardened by decades of disappointment, that there was a better future for Havenwood. He had to present a convincing case for his vision, which included the risky, complicated, and expensive structural overhaul of the old mill, a proposal that defied all conventional thinking for a town in crisis. He felt the immense burden of not just designing a building, but of designing hope itself. To amplify the suspense, the council, at Sterling's subtle insistence, imposed a strict time limit for Liam's final presentation, a mere 15 minutes. 15 minutes to distill years of dreams, weeks of meticulous planning, and a lifetime of conviction into a compelling argument that could sway a skeptical town and change Havenwood's destiny. The compressed timeline intensified the suspense, creating a sense of an urgent, last-ditch effort where every second counted. Every word had to land with precision and impact. As the day of the vote loomed, Liam felt the familiar pangs of self-doubt. What if they still didn't believe him? What if his dreams were still just that? Dreams, in the harsh light of Havenwood's reality. He walked through the decaying streets, seeing the boarded-up windows, the forlorn faces, and a profound sense of loneliness settled over him. He knew he had to face the council and the skeptical town alone, to stand before them and lay bare his heart, his vision, and his unwavering belief in Havenwood's future. His only weapon was the truth of his designs and the sheer audacity of his hope. The weight of his childhood, the burden of a town's dying dream, all rested on his shoulders. The gauntlet had been thrown, and Liam, the boy who dared to dream, was ready to face his ultimate test. The old town hall, usually a place of drowsy civic procedure, crackled with an electric tension that night. Every seat was occupied, and a restless crowd lined the walls, their faces grim under the flickering fluorescent lights. The air was thick with expectation, fear, and a desperate yearning for a definitive answer. This was not just a meeting, it was a reckoning. Mayor Thompson, his face pale and drawn, called the session to order. The opening remarks were perfunctory, the usual legalistic jargon about municipal contracts and zoning ordinances fading into background noise. All eyes were fixed on the two men who represented Havenwood's starkly contrasting futures, Sterling Vance and Liam Hayes. Sterling Vance, ever the showman, took the podium first. He exuded an air of practiced confidence, his voice resonating with authority. He projected a series of charts and graphs onto the large screen behind him, filled with numbers that, to the untrained eye, seemed undeniably logical and financially sound. He emphasized cost-effectiveness, quick returns, and the practical necessity of demolition. "Folks," he boomed, his gaze sweeping over the crowd, "we are a town in crisis. We need real solutions, not abstract dreams. My plan is simple: tear down the mill, a decaying relic that costs us more than it's worth. Replace it with a modern, utilitarian warehouse. It's a clean slate, a fresh start, and it brings immediate jobs with minimal taxpayer burden." He presented doctored financial projections, subtly inflating his proposed revenue while downplaying the long-term environmental and social costs. He even showed a few photos of modern, bland industrial parks, subtly inferring that Havenwood's future lay in such utilitarian simplicity. He painted Liam's plan as reckless, a frivolous expenditure that would bankrupt the town before it even began. This is pragmatism. Ladies and gentlemen, he concluded, his voice ringing with self-assured conviction, not fanciful flights of architectural whimsy. This is the only responsible path. The atmosphere in the hall, already against Liam, grew heavier with skepticism. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the crowd. Then, it was Liam's turn. He walked to the podium, the weight of a lifetime of dreams and a town's desperate hope pressing down on him. He felt the familiar pang of anxiety, the ghost of the boy who had been laughed off this very stage years ago. His heart hammered against his ribs. The silence that fell was thick, expectant, tinged with a deep-seated skepticism. Liam didn't immediately refute Sterling. He didn't resort to fiery rhetoric. Instead, he took a deep breath, composed himself, and with a quiet click, projected his intricate, final architectural renderings onto the screen. The transformation was immediate and stunning. The narrative slowed down, meticulously detailing each aspect of his presentation. The first image was a panoramic view of the transformed mill. It was breathtaking. The old brick facade, lovingly restored, gleamed with new life, integrated seamlessly with towering panels of glass and steel that allowed natural light to flood the interior. It wasn't a demolition, it was a metamorphosis. He showed how the massive, rusted machinery, once symbols of decay, had been artfully repurposed into industrial chic art installations and structural supports, a profound nod to Havenwood's heritage. He spoke, his voice initially hesitant, but gradually growing strong, passionate, carrying the resonant weight of years of suppressed dreams. He explained the seamless integration of historical elements with modern sustainability, showing how solar panels would be discreetly incorporated into the roofline, how rainwater harvesting systems would irrigate the surrounding green spaces. He highlighted the innovative use of light and space, illustrating grand sun-drenched ateliers for artists, dynamic co-working spaces for burgeoning tech startups, and a bustling, multi-level farmers market that would breathe new economic life into the town. He presented detailed structural solutions for the mill, explaining in clear, accessible terms how the building's foundations, once deemed unsalvageable, could be reinforced using cutting-edge techniques, rendering it not just safe, but resilient for centuries to come. He showed precise schematics of the internal layout, demonstrating how the vast industrial spaces would be transformed into functional, aesthetically pleasing, and highly versatile community areas. His projected economic benefits were presented not just in raw numbers, but with a human touch. He illustrated how the revitalized mill would create hundreds of new jobs, not just in construction, but in the services, retail, and tech sectors that would naturally gravitate to such a vibrant hub. He spoke of increased tourism, new businesses attracted by Havenwood's unique blend of history and modernity, and a surge in property values that would benefit every homeowner. He showed how the project would include vocational training programs, ensuring that the displaced Gearworks employees would have the skills necessary to transition into the new economy he was building. His design for the surrounding public spaces was equally compelling. He projected images of tree-lined promenades, children playing in integrated splash pads, and outdoor performance spaces that would foster a true sense of community. It was a human-centric design, one that considered not just economic growth, but the quality of life, the spirit of Havenwood itself. His hands, usually reserved for sketching, now gestured expansively, sweeping across the projected images, bringing his vision to life with palpable energy. He wasn't just presenting plans, he was painting a future that felt both audacious and utterly achievable. As Liam's presentation neared its end, a palpable shift occurred in the room. The initial skepticism, the polite boredom, began to dissipate. Faces that had been skeptical were now transfixed. The murmurs had quieted, replaced by an almost reverent silence. People leaned forward, captivated by the sheer audacity and beauty of his vision. They saw not just blueprints, but a mirror reflecting the Havenwood they had always dreamed of, buried beneath layers of decay and disappointment. This was the breath-holding moment. Just as Liam was about to conclude, a single, compelling slide on the screen summarizing the long-term benefits. Sterling Vance, enraged by the public's wavering attention and the undeniable power of Liam's presentation, exploded. "This is an outrage," he bellowed, his face contorted with fury, interrupting Liam mid-sentence. "He's filling your heads with fantasies, with lies. His numbers are inflated. His designs are impractical. This is a reckless gamble that will bankrupt this town. He's a con artist, an outsider who doesn't care about Havenwood, only about building his ego. You cannot trust a dreamer who left this town behind." He pointed a trembling finger at Liam, his eyes wild with desperation, trying to incite a mob reaction, to pull the crowd back into the familiar comfort of fear and resentment. A few angry murmurs started to rise from the crowd, a dangerous edge creeping into their voices. It seemed, for a terrifying second, that all Liam's efforts were about to be swept away by Sterling's venomous accusations. But then, the doors at the back of the town hall burst open, and a figure, disheveled but determined, strode into the room. It was Sarah Jenkins. She was breathing heavily, her hair a mess, but in her hand, she clutched a stack of documents. Her eyes, usually calm, blazed with a righteous fury. She had just found the conclusive evidence, the smoking gun. "Mr. Vance," she cried, her voice echoing through the suddenly stunned hall. "You speak of honesty, of Havenwood's future. What about this?" She held up the documents, her hand trembling slightly, but her gaze steady as she fixed on Sterling. "These are signed contracts. Mr. Vance, contracts for the sale of the mill's demolition scrap, and more importantly, for the sale of the land itself to a shell corporation. Phoenix Waste Management, a known front for illegal toxic waste dumping. Your plan, Mr. Vance, was never to build a warehouse for Havenwood. Your plan was to turn our riverfront, the heart of our community, into a toxic dump for your own profit. The revelation hit the hall like a thunderclap. The murmurs turned to gasps of outrage, then to furious shouts directed at Sterling. His face, initially defiant, contorted in utter shock, then terror, as his carefully constructed facade crumbled. The public now saw him for what he truly was: not a pragmatic businessman, but a ruthless, corrupt schemer, an antagonist type A, who was willing to poison his own hometown for personal gain. He tried to speak, to deny, but no words came. His mouth gaped, his eyes darted frantically, searching for an escape. The public vindication was instantaneous and overwhelming. The townspeople's expressions transformed from skepticism to shocked anger, then to dawning understanding, and finally, to a profound admiration for Liam's foresight, his unwavering vision, and his undeniable integrity. They surged forward, not in anger towards Liam, but towards Sterling. The laughter that had once ridiculed Liam now turned into a roar of condemnation for Vance. They saw not just an architect, but a protector, a visionary who truly cared for their town, who had saved them from a hidden, insidious threat. Mayor Thompson, stunned but quick to react, slammed his gavel down. "Order, order," he cried. But the calls for Sterling's arrest, for justice, were too loud. Sterling Vance was quickly escorted out, his face pale and sweating, his empire crumbling around him, when order was finally restored, and the fury subsided. A profound silence fell over the hall once more. But this silence was different. It was filled with awe, with gratitude, with a collective realization of the immense gift Liam Hayes had just presented to them. Someone, a young woman from the back, began to clap, then another, and another, slowly, tentatively, then with growing force. A standing ovation erupted. It was spontaneous and heartfelt, a thunderous roar that filled the old town hall, shaking its very foundations. They were not just clapping for a brilliant architect, they were cheering for a hero, for a dream realized, for a future reclaimed. When Mayor Thompson finally called for the vote, there was no need for discussion. Hands shot up, a sea of unanimous agreement. The vote for Liam's project was resounding, a powerful, collective affirmation. Havenwood had chosen its future, and that future was shaped by the very dreamer they had once cast aside. The boy who was teased for being a dreamer had returned, and in a single, climactic moment, he had not only vindicated himself, but had built the foundation for Havenwood's new tomorrow. With the resounding vote, the old town hall, once a crucible of despair, transformed overnight into a buzzing hive of activity and renewed hope. The days that followed were a whirlwind for Liam. Construction on the new town center began almost immediately, breathing life into long dormant streets. The old textile mill, once a hulking symbol of Havenwood's decay, now became a beacon of renewal. Its demolition was handled with painstaking care, not the brutal wrecking ball Sterling Vance had envisioned. Instead, structural elements were meticulously repurposed, brick by salvaged brick, steel beam by restored steel beam, all according to Liam's respectful, circular plan. The very bones of Havenwood's past were being lovingly reintegrated into its future. The town, which had seemed on the verge of economic collapse, now hummed with activity. Scaffolding rose around the mill, the clang of hammers and the whir of machinery replacing the mournful silence. New jobs, both skilled and unskilled, emerged from the dust of construction. Local businesses, buoyed by the palpable sense of optimism, began to dust off their storefronts, some even daring to expand. A palpable sense of future, of potential, permeated Havenwood, washing away the decades of cynicism like a spring rain. Meanwhile, the swift hand of justice moved to address the egregious actions of Sterling Vance. The evidence Sarah Jenkins had uncovered was irrefutable. His secret dealings, the fraudulent contracts, and his monstrous plan to turn the mill site into a toxic waste dump came to light with shocking clarity. The full extent of his greed and his willingness to harm his own community sent shockwaves through Havenwood and beyond. Sterling faced immediate and severe legal repercussions. He was arrested on multiple counts of fraud, environmental endangerment, and attempted conspiracy. His vast real estate empire, built on a foundation of ruthless efficiency and thinly veiled corruption, swiftly crumbled. Properties were seized, bank accounts frozen. He lost his businesses, his reputation, and within weeks was facing significant jail time. His fall was swift and absolute, a fate commensurate with his avarice and his cynical betrayal of the community he had purported to serve. The image of the once imposing Sterling Vance, now handcuffed and led away by state police, became a stark reminder to Havenwood that true progress required integrity, not just profit. The shift in the town's collective mindset was perhaps the most profound transformation. Those council members who had initially sided with Sterling, swayed by his influence and their own fear of change, now approached Liam with genuine humility. Councilwoman Miller, who had publicly dismissed Liam's ideas as too risky, stopped him one afternoon in the bustling new construction zone. "Mr. Hayes," she said, her voice soft, her eyes filled with regret. I was wrong. Terribly wrong. My focus was too narrow, too scared. I saw only the immediate cost, not the incredible value, the vision. Forgive me." She extended a hand, her gesture sincere. "We, the council, are fully behind you now. Anything you need, consider it done." Other prominent townspeople who had mocked Liam years ago, or dismissed him as an unrealistic dreamer, now sought him out, offering awkward but earnest apologies. Mr. Henderson, the owner of the local hardware store who had once chuckled dismissively at Liam's childhood sketches, now stocked specialized architectural tools and proudly displayed Liam's rendering of the revitalized mill in his shop window. They acknowledged their prejudice, their short-sightedness, and their own roles in allowing Havenwood to stagnate. This wasn't just about political expediency. It was a genuine recognition of Liam's genius and a profound sense of relief that he had saved them from Sterling's insidious plot. They actively participated in community events, volunteering for cleanup days around the mill, fundraising for new public art, and eagerly attending town hall meetings, embodying their newfound commitment to Havenwood's vibrant future. The misguided ones had truly seen the error of their ways and were actively working to atone. For Liam, the professional validation was immense, but the personal fulfillment was even greater. Mayor Thompson, alongside a grateful Mrs. Gable and other community leaders, formally offered him the commission to design and oversee the entire revitalization project. Not just the mill. It was a blank check of trust, a testament to his undeniable talent and unwavering commitment. Liam accepted, not just as an outside consultant, but as a returning son. He made a profound decision. His globally renowned architectural firm, Hayes Innovations, would open a permanent flagship office right there in Havenwood, within the very walls of the transformed mill. He brought in a small team of his top architects and urban planners. But crucially, he made it a point to employ local talent, providing training and opportunities for Havenwood residents. This wasn't just a material reward. It was a profound opportunity to fulfill his childhood dream, to pour his boundless creativity into the town that had once scorned him, and to build a lasting legacy that truly belonged to Havenwood. He was no longer just building structures. He was rebuilding a community, brick by hopeful brick. One evening, as the skeleton of the mill began to take on a recognizable, revitalized form, Liam and Sarah Jenkins stood on a makeshift viewing platform, watching the sunset paint the sky in hues of orange and purple. Below them, the construction site buzzed with the quiet, determined energy of the late shift. The rhythmic hum of machinery and the distant shouts of workers created a symphony of creation. "It's incredible, Liam," Sarah said, her voice soft with awe. "To think, just a few months ago, This was destined for demolition, for a toxic dump. She shivered faintly at the thought. You saved this town. You really did. Liam leaned against the railing, his gaze fixed on the burgeoning structure. We saved it. Sarah, he corrected gently, looking at her. Your investigation, the evidence you brought forward, without that, Sterling would have won. My designs, my vision, would have been just that. Visions. You gave them a chance to breathe, to become real. He acknowledged her crucial role, a debt of gratitude that solidified their enduring friendship and professional respect. Sarah smiled, a genuine warmth in her eyes. I just reported the truth. You created the dream. She paused, then asked, her voice tinged with curiosity. Were you ever afraid? Liam. When Sterling was at his worst, when everyone seemed against you. Liam was silent for a moment, recalling the sting of the taunts, the isolation he had felt. Every single day. Sarah, he admitted, his voice barely a whisper. The fear was real. The doubt, too. It's hard to stand alone, to believe in something when everyone else is telling you it's impossible. But then, I would look at my designs, at the potential, at the people of Havenwood, and the conviction. It outweighed the fear. My belief in what Havenwood could be was stronger than my fear of what it was. He looked at her, his eyes filled with a quiet strength, and I remembered the boy who sketched in the library, who refused to let his dreams die. I couldn't let him down. Sarah nodded, a newfound understanding in her gaze. Their conversation was a quiet moment of reflection, a shared understanding of the battles fought and the victories won. It was a powerful testament to the journey they had both embarked on, the challenges they had overcome, and the profound power of believing in an unseen future. The new calm had truly settled over Havenwood, a hard-won peace built on integrity, vision, and the collaborative spirit of those who dared to dream. The foundation for Havenwood's new era was now firmly in place. 5 years later, the town of Havenwood was utterly transformed, a vibrant, thriving testament to a dream once ridiculed. What had been a place clinging desperately to a dying past was now a beacon of innovation and community, a living, breathing blueprint of a future built with passion and purpose. The quiet hum of decay had been replaced by the energetic pulse of progress. Yet, remarkably, Havenwood had retained its unique, small-town character, a delicate balance Liam had meticulously woven into every design. The new town center, a collaborative masterpiece, was the pulsating heart of this metamorphosis. The old textile mill, once a crumbling husk, stood magnificently reborn as the Havenwood Community Hub. Its restored brick facade, gleaming with historic pride, seamlessly integrated with the modern glass and steel additions, a striking visual metaphor for the town's journey. Inside, the vast, airy spaces buzzed with life. The ground floor housed bustling art galleries showcasing local talent, interspersed with innovative tech incubators where young entrepreneurs passionately coded and brainstormed. The lower level, once dark and damp, was now a vibrant farmer's market, its stalls overflowing with fresh, regional produce and artisanal crafts, a weekly gathering point for all of Havenwood. New businesses had sprung up like wildflowers after a spring rain. The once empty storefronts on Main Street now boasted trendy cafes, independent bookstores, and quaint boutiques, drawing visitors from neighboring towns. Families, drawn by the revitalized economy and the town's newfound vibrancy, had begun to return, their laughter echoing through the newly landscaped parks and public squares. Havenwood, once a ghost of its former self, was now a thriving, modern town. Its future as bright and clear as the Appalachian sky on a crisp autumn day. Liam Hayes, no longer just a world-famous architect, had become a revered leader and mentor, his roots firmly replanted in the soil of his hometown. He lived permanently in Havenwood now, in a uniquely designed, eco-friendly home, perched on a hill overlooking the transformed town. It was a structure of glass, recycled timber, and green roofs, a physical manifestation of his architectural philosophy: beauty, sustainability, and harmony with nature. He was still a dreamer, perhaps even more so, but now his dreams were tangible, rooted in the very fabric of the town he had helped rebuild, living and breathing within the brick and mortar, the laughter and the life of Havenwood. His commitment to paying it forward was as foundational to his life as any steel beam in his designs. Liam established a non-profit foundation, the Havenwood Blueprint, which quickly became a national model for community development. The foundation offered generous scholarships to local students pursuing architecture, urban planning, and sustainable design, particularly those from disadvantaged backgrounds who might otherwise never have the opportunity. He believed deeply that the future of design lay in diverse perspectives and local talent. Beyond scholarships, the Havenwood Blueprint initiated a rigorous mentorship program. Liam personally guided young, aspiring designers from Havenwood, inviting them into his firm's bustling local office, allowing them to shadow his team, to learn from his decades of experience, and to contribute their fresh ideas to ongoing projects. He empowered them to dream big, to think critically, and to recognize the profound impact they could have on their own communities. He actively championed sustainable development practices and community-led urban planning initiatives in other struggling towns across the region, sharing Havenwood's success story as a powerful, living model of transformation. Sarah Jenkins, now an award-winning investigative journalist whose work had gained national recognition, chronicled Havenwood's ongoing story. She published a critically acclaimed book, The Blueprint of Hope: How a Dreamer Rebuilt a Town, which detailed Havenwood's transformation. The book was not just a narrative of architectural triumph. It was a searing exposé of the systemic issues: corruption, apathy, and short-sighted greed that had once plagued the town, implicitly highlighting the forces Liam had battled. She continued to be Liam's close friend and confidant, a vital chronicler of Havenwood's inspiring evolution. Her stories, published in national magazines, brought even more positive attention and investment to the town. The story culminates on a warm spring afternoon, a symphony of life unfolding around Liam. He stood on the rooftop garden of the transformed mill building, a verdant expanse of wildflowers and native grasses, overlooking the bustling town square below. Children laughed as they chased each other through the integrated fountains that recycled rainwater. Families strolled along the newly paved, tree-lined promenades, enjoying the vibrant atmosphere. In the distance, the majestic Appalachian Mountains rose, timeless and enduring, silent witnesses to Havenwood's rebirth. Liam looked out at the beautifully realized dome of the new town hall, its graceful curve now perfectly executed, mirroring the subtle, grand aspirations of the original, forgotten blueprint he had discovered as a child. It was a subtle nod to his past, a powerful symbol of dreams realized, and a future meticulously built with passion and unwavering purpose. He took a deep breath. The clean, crisp air filled with the scent of fresh concrete, blooming flowers, and the faint, sweet aroma of newly baked bread from a nearby bakery. It was a harmonious blend of progress and nature, of the old and the new, a symphony of life he had orchestrated. He closed his eyes for a moment, a profound sense of contentment settling over him. The boy who was teased for being a dreamer was no longer just a dreamer. He was the architect of a vibrant, living dream, a testament to the enduring power of vision, integrity, and the courage to build a better tomorrow. Havenwood was not just a town. It was a living monument to the fact that even the smallest, most overlooked seeds of dreams, when nurtured with unwavering belief, could grow into towering, magnificent realities. If this story stirred your heart, if it reminds you that courage can alter destinies and that light always finds a path even in the deepest darkness, please leave a comment, share this story with those who need inspiration. Like, subscribe, and hit the bell to never miss our upcoming stories.